How come a phone can now cost as much if more than a decent laptop? A phone can now be more expensive than laptops and tablets. What is the rationale? We call them phones due to historical reasons. But in reality they are more like pocket computers that happen to also make phone calls and take photos and video. I mean, it basically is a decent laptop. Lots of engineering to fit a very capable device, sometimes better than a laptop in your pocket. That costs money. Not to mention that part of the revenue is eaten by modem manufacturers like Qualcomm in form of royalties, which of course we as the final consumers pay for. I purely opinion think phone prices have risen so much largely due to the cameras getting better. Many phones these days as capable as laptops in a comparable price range. Also for most people their phone is the most used possession they own. The investment of $1,000 into a smartphone that is going to be used daily for 3-4 years potentially, for hours a day, is very much worth it to most people. The tech in phones can be more expensive. Making the same 1440p high refresh rate screen smaller and touch is quite expensive. The cameras found in most laptops are much simpler than the phone ones. Don't forget about the software side. Programming stuff like photo processing software is pretty time expensive. Because people are willing to pay for it. Same reason why a woman's razor will cost twice as much as a man's razor. Even though the only difference is one is pink. Scale. It costs more to manufacture such small components and put it all together. Throw in the extra R&D to keep ahead of a highly competitive market along with associated advertising costs, etc. It all gets pretty costly. The rationale is that companies will charge as much as consumers are willing to pay for their products. It's a trend for the price of a flagship phone to be 50-60 profit margins. This does not count the time and cost to make the tooling, designing the phone, and designing the SoC, opposed to PCs being at most 10 profit unless you are Apple. Also, nobody really needs the $1,000 flagship. Imagine it being the top-end $7,000 MacBook or the Tesla Model S Plaid. An S23 Ultra still started at $1,199. You can buy it new now for $899. In another 6 months to a year you could get it for $500. This phone will be better in almost every way compared to a new $500 phone. A phone is still $50. A laptop the size of a phone that is more powerful than your actual laptop is the same price as your laptop. Simple answer: people will pay it. Phones are pretty fancy devices. They can have moderately high-end for the size parts and pretty good cameras. And with laptops, those range in price a lot more than phones do. So there's still some major differences in the pricing. Personally, I would say a decent laptop tends to start at $1,000 and up, whereas generally $1,000 is towards the top of high-end phones. But my idea of decent means it can play modern games and render things I need it to in a timely fashion. Whereas someone else would call a $150 netbook decent. Phones are way more secure too in my experience. There's some value in that, I think. More specs, more components, more percentage of a company's profit margin it represents. The amount of work that goes into smartphones today is actually insane. Apple, for example, has more than half the world's fab time booked just for iPhone chip manufacturing, while Snapdragon and Samsung have a large chunk as well. Apple and Samsung make up like 85-90% of the global smartphone industry. And for both companies it's a huge segment of their business. Particularly for Apple. We keep raising prices, they keep buying, it's like magic. It's a tiny laptop. I'd love to see the RAM, processing, etc. specs comparison between an 800 phone and an 800 laptop. A laptop screen isn't significantly more expensive to make than a phone screen. But putting the same computing power in your hand versus in a laptop is significantly more expensive. You're not buying a phone. You're buying a micro camera with amazing quality and a powerful computer that fits in your hand. My S22 Ultra has more storage 512 GB and more RAM 12 GB than my MacBook Air M2. It is as capable as my laptop and much more versatile. I can also use DeX, an external monitor with a USB-C dock, and run most of the apps I need. Some people are willing to pay that price. Components are extremely tiny and harder to produce than bigger ones. The computing power of high-end phones is extremely high for that size. I'd even say far too high for most average users unless you're running Genshin Impact on the highest settings while connected to a 4K TV or something. Then it's probably a bit low. The cameras are pretty good for the size. That's all I can think of. Because they can do so much of the same things as a decent laptop but can also fit in your pocket. Oh, and it makes phone calls too. Phones can have better specs than laptops and tablets. It's not the size that matters. It's what's inside that counts. People keep paying, then ask why. The carriers keep pushing new phones, creating demand for unneeded upgrades. People are dumb. Demand high prices. Because you can't carry a laptop in your pocket. Because if it had a bigger screen it would be a decent laptop. Samsung DeX makes your Galaxy a computer. Apple fanboys have no idea what they are missing out on. It has similar performance, often better graphics performance. It has a camera that can rival $500 cameras. All in a miniature packaging. Made from high-end materials when compared to most laptops. It has all of the same components as a laptop, but miniaturized. And then some extra things a laptop doesn't need. Next question. 'Cause they're miniature laptops. That more expensive phone is more powerful than that cheap laptop is how? Top-of-the-line new CPU is more expensive than a 2-year-old one in that budget laptop. It boils down to demand and opportunity. Way more people want phones and are willing to pay higher prices for them. Demand. This provides an opportunity for the phone manufacturers to charge as much as they can, which they do. Because you have almost the same computing power in a phone, but they've shrunk it to fit into your pocket and still maintain a charge for 12 hours with decent use. Take a laptop, shrink it a few times and there you go. Sure, the prices are wild and inflated, but it's basically a high-powered computer in your pocket. It actually takes more research and development to make the phone than the laptop. In the technology world, smaller things are harder to engineer and cost more to make. Miniaturization is expensive. People are on it 24/7. When will you realize this concept that you're paying pennies to use it per day if you keep it for just even a year? A phone doesn't. You can buy just a phone for like £20. A phone costs more than most laptops because it's a mini computer. Premium price on fitting something that performance in such a small package, plus we demand insane specs on flagships like 1440p 120Hz screens, HQ cameras with 4K video, etc. Higher spec than what you'd see on laptops. Plus other things you wouldn't expect to see on most laptops like GPS, gyro, heart rate, accelerometer sensors. Could consider it a 7/8-inch handheld laptop.